July 25, 2024. A private plane lands at a small airport near El Paso, Texas. On board, two of Mexico's most wanted men. One is Ismael El Mayo Zambada, a 76-year-old drug lord who had evaded capture for over 50 years. The other is Joaquín Guzmán López, son of the infamous El Chapo. U.S. federal agents are waiting on the tarmac. Both men are arrested immediately. But this wasn't a carefully planned law enforcement operation. According to El Mayo's lawyer, he was kidnapped, betrayed by El Chapo's son, and forcibly flown across the border. 6 weeks later, one of Mexico's bloodiest cartel wars in history erupted. Over 600 people would die in the first 4 months alone. This is the story of Los Chapitos, El Chapo's sons, and their violent fight to control the world's most powerful fentanyl empire. To understand Los Chapitos, you first need to understand their father. Joaquín El Chapo Guzmán López was born in 1957 in the rural town of La Tuna, Sinaloa, Mexico. By the late 1980s, he had co-founded what would become the world's most powerful drug cartel, the Sinaloa Cartel. El Chapo pioneered drug smuggling techniques that changed the game. His organization built air-conditioned tunnels under the U.S.-Mexico border. They hid cocaine in fire extinguishers and chili pepper cans. They used submarines, drones, and even catapults. The U.S. Drug Enforcement Administration estimated that El Chapo's cartel was responsible for importing more than 200 tons of cocaine into the United States between 1990 and 2008. His personal wealth was estimated at over $1 billion. But El Chapo became just as famous for his escapes as for his empire. In 2001, he escaped from a maximum security Mexican prison by hiding in a laundry cart. He remained free for 13 years. In 2014, Mexican authorities recaptured him in the beach town of Mazatlan. But on July 11, 2015, he escaped again, this time through a mile-long tunnel that his associates had dug directly into his prison cell's shower. The tunnel had lighting, ventilation, and even a motorcycle track for removing soil during construction. Mexican authorities recaptured him 6 months later in January 2016. This time, they made sure he wouldn't escape. In January 2017, El Chapo was extradited to the United States. His trial in Brooklyn Federal Court in 2019 was dubbed the Trial of the Century. Over 56 witnesses testified against him, many of them former associates who described decades of violence, corruption, and drug trafficking. On February 12, 2019, a jury found El Chapo guilty on all 10 counts, including engaging in a continuing criminal enterprise, a charge that carries a mandatory life sentence. On July 17, 2019, he was sentenced to life in prison plus 30 years. He was also ordered to forfeit $12.6 billion. Today, El Chapo is incarcerated at ADX Florence in Colorado, America's most secure federal prison. He spends 23 hours a day in solitary confinement in a 10 by 8-foot cell. No one has ever escaped from ADX Florence. But El Chapo's imprisonment didn't end the Sinaloa Cartel. Instead, his 4 sons stepped up to take control. After El Chapo's arrest in 2016, his 4 sons, collectively known as Los Chapitos or the Little Chapos, assumed control of the Sinaloa Cartel's most profitable operations. The 4 brothers are Iván Archibaldo Guzmán Salazar, Jesús Alfredo Guzmán Salazar, Ovidio Guzmán López, and Joaquín Guzmán López. Iván and Jesús Alfredo, known as El Chapito and Alfredito, are El Chapo's sons from his first marriage. Ovidio and Joaquín are his sons from another relationship. Together, they transformed their father's cocaine empire into something far more deadly. Los Chapitos made fentanyl their core business. According to the U.S. Treasury Department, Los Chapitos' dominance over fentanyl trafficking is largely the result of their capacity to procure precursor chemicals from China, while also controlling production through secret laboratories in Sinaloa. These aren't small operations. The Treasury Department describes them as super labs, large-scale drug laboratories capable of producing 10 or more pounds of fentanyl per production cycle. The precursor chemicals arrive at Mexican ports, particularly Manzanillo, shipped from manufacturers in China and Hong Kong. Companies with names like Wanjiang Biotechnology advertise Mexico stock of chemicals like 2-bromethylbenzene, substances specifically used to manufacture fentanyl. One company repeatedly sanctioned by the Treasury is Sumilab, a Culiacan-based chemical supply company. Even after sanctions in May 2023, the Favela Lopez family simply removed Sumilab's signage from storefronts, but continued supplying precursor chemicals to Los Chapitos. Los Chapitos then pressed the fentanyl into counterfeit pills, designed to look like legitimate prescription medications: OxyContin, Xanax, Adderall. A single pill can contain a lethal dose. The scale is staggering. In December 2024, Mexican authorities seized 20 million fentanyl pills in Sinaloa, the largest fentanyl bust in Mexico's history. According to the DEA, in 2023 alone, U.S. law enforcement seized over 77 million fentanyl pills and nearly 12,000 pounds of fentanyl powder, enough for 386 million lethal doses. The Centers for Disease Control reports that over 500,000 Americans have died from fentanyl poisoning. The U.S. Attorney General has stated that the Sinaloa Cartel is responsible for a significant portion of these deaths. But Los Chapitos didn't just inherit their father's business model. They inherited his willingness to use extreme violence. According to a U.S. Department of Justice indictment, Los Chapitos and their associates have used corkscrews, electrocution, and hot chilies to torture rivals. Some victims were fed dead or alive to tigers. The U.S. government took notice. Between 2012 and 2025, all four brothers were designated under various sanctions programs. The U.S. State Department offered rewards of up to $10 million each for information leading to the arrest of Ivan and Jesus Alfredo. But the most significant development came on February 20, 2025, when the U.S. State Department designated the entire Sinaloa Cartel as a foreign terrorist organization, the same designation used for groups like ISIS and Al-Qaeda. Then, on June 9, 2025, the U.S. Treasury sanctioned Los Chapitos as a faction, along with Ivan and Jesus Alfredo individually, pursuant to both counter-narcotics and counter-terrorism authorities. The designation meant that Los Chapitos weren't just drug traffickers anymore. In the eyes of the U.S. government, they were terrorists. But by mid-2024, Los Chapitos faced an even bigger problem, and it came from within their own cartel. For decades, the Sinaloa Cartel had been co-led by two men, El Chapo and Ismael El Mayo Zambada Garcia. El Mayo, now 76 years old, had been in the drug trade since the 1980s. Unlike El Chapo, he had never been captured. He had an almost mythical reputation for avoiding arrest. When El Chapo was imprisoned in 2019, El Mayo became the Sinaloa Cartel's most senior leader. His faction, known as Los Mayos, or La Mayiza, controlled significant territory across Sinaloa, Sonora, and Baja California. Los Chapitos and Los Mayos had an uneasy alliance. They divided control of Culiacan, the capital of Sinaloa state. Los Chapitos largely controlled the north of the city. Los Mayos controlled the south. But on July 25, 2024, everything changed. According to a statement released by El Mayo's attorney, on that day, Joaquín Guzmán López, one of El Chapo's sons, invited El Mayo to a meeting at a ranch just outside Culiacan. The stated purpose was to help resolve a political dispute in Sinaloa state. El Mayo trusted Joaquín. As he stated, "I have known him since he was a young boy." But when El Mayo entered the meeting room, he was ambushed. According to his attorney, he was ambushed, thrown to the ground, and handcuffed by 6 men in military uniforms and Joaquín. His legs were tied, and a black bag was placed over his head. El Mayo was driven to a nearby airstrip and forced onto a private plane. On the plane, Joaquín removed the hood and bound El Mayo to the seat with zip ties. No one else was aboard the plane except Joaquín, the pilot, and myself, El Mayo's statement said. The plane flew directly to El Paso, Texas, where U.S. federal agents were waiting on the tarmac. Both El Mayo and Joaquín were immediately taken into custody. The U.S. ambassador to Mexico, Ken Salazar, later acknowledged that El Mayo was brought to the United States against his will. He stated, "This was an operation between cartels, where one turned the other one in." Joaquín Guzmán López's lawyer denied that it was a kidnapping, calling it a voluntary surrender after extended negotiations with U.S. authorities. But the Mexican Federal Attorney General's office conducted its own investigation. On August 16, 2024, U.S. Attorney General Merrick Garland informed Mexican authorities that El Mayo had arrived in the United States against his will. The Mexican government prepared a request for an arrest warrant for Joaquín Guzmán López on charges of abduction of a person in Mexico in order to hand him over to the authorities of another country. Charges that, according to the Mexican Attorney General, constitute treason. El Mayo's statement also claimed that another person was killed during his kidnapping, Hector Cuen, a former mayor of Culiacan. The Mexican Attorney General later confirmed that Cuen was murdered at the same time and in the same place where El Mayo was kidnapped. For 6 weeks after the arrests, Sinaloa remained eerily calm. Analysts wondered if El Mayo's faction would simply accept the loss of their leader. They wouldn't. On September 9, 2024, the war began. At dawn on September 9, 2024, a Mexican army convoy encountered armed civilians in La Campiña, a neighborhood on the east side of Culiacan and a stronghold of the Los Chapitos faction. A shootout erupted. One sergeant was killed. Within hours, violence spread across Culiacan and neighboring municipalities. The war between Los Chapitos and Los Mayos had begun. Los Mayos saw El Mayo's kidnapping as an unforgivable betrayal. Their response was brutal. According to local security officials, what followed was an extermination campaign. The violence was personal. Many members on both sides had grown up together within the Sinaloa Cartel. They knew each other's operational bases, safe houses, and family members. This intimate knowledge made the conflict exceptionally deadly. Bodies began appearing across Culiacan, often dumped in the streets or left in cars. Some had sombreros placed on their heads. Others had pizza slices or boxes attached to them with knives. These weren't random symbols. The sombreros represented Los Mayos, a reference to El Mayo's preference for headwear. The pizzas represented Los Chapitos. Their faction is sometimes called La Chapiza, and they even have a marijuana brand called Star Kush, whose logo features an astronaut eating a slice of pizza. The numbers are staggering. According to the Sinaloa State Prosecutor's Office, more than 600 people were killed in the first 4 months of the conflict. By the end of 2024, the death toll exceeded 1,000, but these are likely underestimates. According to data compiled by the newspaper Noroeste, 519 people were killed by December 2024. Independent monitoring organization ACLED recorded different numbers, and Mexican authorities have a history of underreporting casualties during periods of violence. By mid-2025, the situation had grown even worse. According to CNN's analysis of official data, homicides in Sinaloa had risen by more than 400% compared to the previous year. Through August 2025, at least 571 civilians had been killed in Sinaloa, already surpassing the total for all of 2024. As of late 2025, Noroeste reported a total of 2,197 homicides and 2,133 kidnappings since the conflict began. But the true horror lies in the disappearances. Of 1,610 forced disappearances reported in Sinaloa in 2024, nearly 60% occurred during the final 4 months of the year, after the war began. According to a member of a local security commission, what we're seeing is historic. We've never seen this many forced disappearances before, and considering the cifra negra, the unreported crimes, there could be twice as many. Insight crime investigators discovered clandestine crematoriums in southern Culiacan, patches of scorched earth where bodies were burned to destroy evidence. The violence has devastated civilian life. Schools regularly close during waves of violence. Businesses have shuttered. The historic center of Culiacan, once bustling with restaurants and shops, now sits largely empty. Miguel Taniyama, owner of the Clan Taniyama restaurant in Culiacan, told reporters, "Life in Culiacan has almost disappeared." The war has spread beyond Culiacan. The violence reached Mazatlan, a tourist hub 140 miles south of Culiacan. Between January and September 2025, Mazatlan recorded 95 homicides, a 227% increase from the previous year. Tourism dropped by nearly 25%, forcing hotels and businesses to lay off workers. The Mexican government deployed 14,000 soldiers to Sinaloa, including special forces and Marines. But their presence has done little to stop the killing. On October 21, 2024, Mexican forces engaged in one of the deadliest confrontations of the conflict, killing 19 cartel members and capturing El Max, a high-ranking member of Los Mayos. The next day, a narco banner from Los Chapitos appeared in Culiacan. It was addressed to Ismael Zambada Siqueiros, El Mayo's son, known as Mayito Flaco, who now leads Los Mayos faction. The banner threatened to turn him over to U.S. authorities and mocked him over El Max's capture. Los Mayos responded with their own message. On October 26th, a cooler decorated with bows and pizza drawings was found in Culiacan. Inside was a severed head, allegedly of a Los Chapitos member, along with a threatening message directed at the faction. As of November 2025, the war continues. There is no end in sight. While Sinaloa descended into chaos, the United States government escalated its campaign against the cartel. The designation of the Sinaloa Cartel as a foreign terrorist organization in February 2025 wasn't just symbolic. It opened the door to military action. President Trump repeatedly threatened to use the U.S. military against Mexican drug cartels. In August 2025, he signed a directive ordering the Pentagon to prepare options for military force against foreign terrorist organizations, including potential strikes on cartel leaders and fentanyl laboratories in Mexico. Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum rejected any U.S. military presence on Mexican soil, calling such action an invasion. But she also increased cooperation in other ways. In February 2025, Mexico transferred 29 high-level criminal suspects to U.S. custody. In August 2025, they transferred another 26 cartel figures, including Abigail González Valencia, a leader of Los Queenies, a group closely aligned with the rival Jalisco New Generation Cartel. Meanwhile, the legal pressure on Los Chapitos intensified. Between 2023 and 2025, the U.S. Treasury Department conducted at least 9 major sanctions actions targeting the Sinaloa Cartel. In May 2023, Treasury sanctioned Joaquín Guzmán López and the chemical supply network that provided precursor chemicals to Los Chapitos' superlabs. In June 2025, Treasury sanctioned Los Chapitos as a faction, along with Ivan and Jesus Alfredo individually. In September 2025, Treasury sanctioned Los Mayos, the rival faction led by El Mayo's son. In October 2025, Treasury sanctioned 8 Mexican individuals and 12 Mexico-based companies affiliated with Los Chapitos for supplying illicit fentanyl precursor chemicals. The Treasury Department has now sanctioned over 600 Sinaloa Cartel-linked individuals and companies. In U.S. courts, the 4 brothers faced mounting charges. All 4 were indicted on multiple federal drug trafficking charges across jurisdictions in Illinois, California, New York, and Washington, D.C. Ovidio Guzmán López, captured in Mexico in January 2023 and extradited to the United States, pleaded guilty on July 11, 2025 to 2 counts of drug conspiracy and 2 counts of engaging in a continuing criminal enterprise. He agreed to cooperate with federal authorities. Joaquín Guzmán López, who surrendered in July 2024 along with El Mayo, remains in federal custody in Chicago. His lawyer indicated in late 2024 that he is negotiating a plea deal with prosecutors. In May 2025, 17 family members of Ovidio Guzmán López crossed the border from Tijuana into the United States as part of a deal with the Trump administration, likely in exchange for Ovidio's cooperation. Ivan and Jesus Alfredo remain fugitives in Mexico. The U.S. State Department offers rewards of up to $10 million each for information leading to their arrest and conviction. And El Mayo? On August 12, 2025, Ismael Zambada Garcia pleaded guilty in U.S. federal court in Brooklyn to charges related to his decades-long role directing the Sinaloa Cartel. He faces a mandatory life sentence. He is expected to provide testimony about the cartel's long history of bribing Mexican police and military commanders. In August 2025, the DEA conducted Operation Take Back America, a coordinated 5-day enforcement surge targeting the Sinaloa Cartel. The operation resulted in 617 arrests, seizures of 480 kilograms of fentanyl powder, over 714,000 counterfeit pills, 2,209 kilograms of methamphetamine, and nearly $13 million in cash. DEA Acting Administrator Robert Murphy stated, "We are dismantling these networks piece by piece, and we won't stop until the last brick of their empires falls." But for all the arrests, sanctions, and seizures, the fentanyl keeps flowing, and in Sinaloa, the war continues. The story of Los Chapitos is ultimately a story about legacy and consequences. El Chapo built an empire. His sons inherited it, and in their fight to control it, they've unleashed a level of violence that has devastated an entire Mexican state. Over 500,000 Americans have died from fentanyl poisoning. Most of that fentanyl was produced by cartels like the Sinaloa Cartel and trafficked into the United States. In Sinaloa, more than 2,000 people have been killed since September 2024. Thousands more have been kidnapped. The true number may never be known. 2 of the 4 brothers are now in U.S. custody. 1 is cooperating with authorities. 1 is negotiating a plea deal. 2 remain at large. El Mayo, the man who evaded capture for 50 years, was betrayed by his allies and now faces life in prison. And in Culiacan, the killing continues. Civilians live in fear. The economy has collapsed. Families have fled. The cycle of violence that began with El Chapo has not ended with his imprisonment. If anything, it has only intensified. This was the 3rd installment of our series on the global drug trade. In our first video, we showed how policy mistakes created the global methamphetamine crisis. In our second, we showed how China flooded America with fentanyl. This video showed who produces and traffics that fentanyl today, and the human cost of that trade. The war on drugs has failed, but the drugs keep flowing and the bodies keep piling up.